Good night, sweet dreams. That's what my dad would say to me. But sometimes I had trouble falling asleep. Then he would tell me stories about his travels. I want this tradition to live on. So now, let me share my stories with you. When I open my eyes, the world is made of wood. Dark, solid planks stretch across the ceiling, intersected by strong crossbeams. Elegant honey-colored paneling climbs down the walls. Little knots in the shiny parquet floor gaze up at me like curious eyes. A light grain runs around the edges of the room, from the wall cupboard to the curved chest of drawers, and finally to the polished door of my room. I can count the tree rings on my bedside cabinet. Wooden table, wooden chair, wooden sofa. Even my bed is made of a complex reed construction. I wiggle my toes a bit just to make sure those haven't magically turned into wood during the night. Fortunately, there's no creaking of gnarled branches, only that of my good old joints. I stretch my well-rested limbs and slide out of the comfortable bed. Stepping out onto the balcony, I appreciate the angle at which the morning sun touches my surroundings. From here, I can see it reach all the way across the lush terrain of Delta Dunării, the Danube Delta, where Europe's second longest river splits into a wild triangle of branches before ending its journey in the Black Sea. The little village I'm staying in at the easternmost tip of Romania sits right at the last stretch of the St. George branch and is appropriately named Sfântu Gheorghe. Looking out across the wide river is like looking at a landscape painting in which the palette consists entirely of green. An endless variety of plants stretches to the horizon. Lush weeping willows sway in the wind, their leaves whispering of the dawning summer day. Wildly sprawling poplars rustle their leaves invitingly. Dense green bushes are twisted into an impenetrable undergrowth. And in the foreground, the Danube winds its way through the landscape in gentle arcs, a wide strip of bottle green water reflecting the sun's rays with dazzling beauty. A symphony of cheerful birdsong wells up around me, a competition of trills, warbles, and melodies. I hear a particularly loud caw, and when I look up, I'm graced with the impressive white wings of a pelican far above my head. I gaze after it until it disappears behind the trees. Then I grab my little bird-watching book from my bedside table to document it. Well, little perhaps isn't the right term for this book. It contains descriptions and pictures of all of the more than 300 bird species that inhabit or pass through this delta, so it is in fact fairly thick. I leaf through it and look for the right page. Here, the glossy ibis with its long curved beak and shining brown feathers. And here, a black-crowned night heron on the hunt, its beady red eyes cataloging even the smallest prey. And there, the great white pelican, with a wingspan that can reach over 3 meters. I turn the pages, admiring the swift swallows, majestic swans, and strutting cranes, and suddenly it peers cheekily up at me. The kingfisher, a lightning-fast hunting bird, and my personal white whale. The book raves about this little bird for 2 entire pages, describing the moment when it plunges from the air into the water, only to reappear shortly afterwards with a fish in its beak. Colorful photos of its vibrant royal blue mantle and its bright orange belly. No matter how hard I've been keeping an eye out for it, the kingfisher has yet to make an appearance for me. It's been at the top of my checklist all week, and today, as I look out at the sky again, I must say I feel a lucky streak in the air. There's a dirt path that leads from the back door of my wooden lodging directly to the water's edge. It snakes between the trees and bushes as if trying its best not to disturb them. I feel charmingly enveloped by nature, despite the village sitting right behind me. It's quiet and peaceful here, without the constant thrum of motors I'm used to hearing. And the occasional motors I do hear aren't those of cars. I turn the last bend in my little path, and I'm dropped off at the village's docks, just in time to see a motorboat skimming past. There are 2 more tethered to wooden posts nearby, swaying excitedly on the soft waves, as if eager for an adventure. Unfortunately for them, my adventures today require silence, so I pass by them, heading instead to the rental shed at the end of the pier. Over the course of the past week, I've gotten to know the young man working there quite well. Alexandru shakes his head in amusement when I walk up to him, his neat brown hair flopping from side to side. At this point, I don't even have to show him the vessel I'd like. He walks right over to the faded red kayak I've been using every day and lifts it from its resting place with strong arms. I follow him to the edge of the pier with a smile of my own, reassuring him that yes, I was a bit sore when I came back yesterday, but I'm totally fine again now. He steadies the kayak in the water, pats my shoulder, and wishes me a safe trip, then goes back to his tasks. I securely stow away my backpack and slip my legs into the opening, then use my paddle to push myself away from the docks. Off we go. Fine rays of sunlight break through the surrounding willows and project glittering patterns onto the water. Small waves roll across the river from my movements, gently rocking the reeds as I glide forward with light rows. In the tranquility of the surrounding nature, my paddle dips silently into the surface of the water, rippling as I pull it out again. I fall into a relaxed rhythm. Paddle left, paddle right. Just a few days ago, Alexandru laughed when I set out like a clumsy toddler, wobbling back and forth across the river, but by now I can flow effortlessly in a straight line, without even thinking about it. My arms find the movements all by themselves. There's something meditative about being surrounded by the buzzing of cicadas, the calling of birds, the wind rustling through the bushes. To my left, the wide river splits off into several smaller branches. I pick one at random, following it around a few bends before taking the paddle out of the water and placing it across the bow of the kayak. My momentum continues carrying me on silently. The warm sun caresses my arms, and I lean over the edge of the kayak to splash a handful of fresh water on my face. Below my swirling reflection, the water is full of movement. Small shoals of fish dart around, their silvery scales catching the sunlight like polished coins in a wishing well. They snap a quick turn and vanish behind a patch of lily pads, disappearing between the tangle of long roots. The lily's white petals appear to be stretching out to soak in the sun. The pads are nudged by the wind and bump into each other, passing on the motion from one green circle to the next. A reflection on the water's surface catches my eye, and I turn my attention downstream. There's a fallen tree trunk sticking out from the bank a few dozen meters away, and sitting on it, a handful of dark-feathered shadows. With very slow movements, so as not to alert them, I lift my binoculars from their resting spot around my neck. Black plumage with a metallic yellow sheen where the feathers catch the light. Large beaks that have a distinct hook at the front. A small patch of yellow around the underside of the beak and a slight crest on the back of the head when they turn away from me. I cautiously retrieve my bird-watching book and quietly flip through it until I find the right page. The great cormorant, found on almost every continent in the world, and a voracious fish-eater. Those living in colder regions are migratory, but the ones here stay year-round. Apparently, they are quite abundant here, and I should have spotted one sooner, but well, at least I can happily cross another species off my checklist now. A particularly large cormorant hops out of the water onto the tree trunk. It spreads its wings and waddles on the spot, looking like it wants to intimidate the others. They don't really seem to be paying it any attention, though. Glancing into my book of knowledge, I find out that this is how cormorants dry their wings after diving. Hold their feathers apart, let the wind flow through them, and wait. I watch them for a little while longer, then turn and head back down the river. I'd rather not disturb them if I don't have to. I find another branching river and start down that one instead. It's much narrower here, the vegetation wilder. In some places, I have to work my way through the reeds. In others, low-hanging trees block my way, and I have to turn onto another path. At one point, When I'm sure that I'm just about lost in this labyrinth of rivers, I reach a section of trees that create a ceiling across the entire river. Dangling from their branches are long vines that hang all the way down to the water's surface. I brush them aside like a curtain, and I'm met with a small sparkling lake. The water here is smooth and polished as glass. I feel like I've stepped into a forest clearing or a desert oasis. There's a different kind of silence here, one that's almost magical. As if this lake is protected from the wild world beyond, safe within the ring of foliage that surrounds it. And the most mystical part of it is a tiny island right in the middle of the lake. It's miraculously free of undergrowth, just a small meadow and a few trees. A perfect place to stop for lunch. I pull my kayak ashore at a shallow spot on the bank. It feels good to finally stretch out my legs and back. I settle down in the shade of a weeping willow and pull out my map of the area. This lake should be distinct enough for me to figure out where I am. And yes, it takes me a minute of searching, but I do eventually find the blue outline of a lake with a small oval dot of land in the middle. I use my pen to draw a path back to the main river, then tuck the map away and retrieve my lunch from my backpack. The warm scent of grilled food immediately wafts out of the plastic box, and I find myself indecisive about which delicacy to eat first. On the one side are mititei, little sausage-shaped rolls made of spiced ground meat. On the other are boules, with a center of melted cheese wrapped up in mamaliga, a golden brown crust of cornmeal. I have loved both of these since I first arrived here, and eventually decide that surely I can just eat both at once. While I'm blissfully enjoying my meal, a pair of pelicans flies up to the island. They land by the bank under a nearby tree and begin scanning the waters for a meal of their own. Their long, pointed beaks stab into the river repeatedly, but they come up empty more often than not. I debate offering them the last few bites of my food, but before I can even start to decide whether birds would enjoy mamaliga, they take off again and disappear behind the treetops. I suppose I should gradually make my way home as well. I feel energized by my meal and ready to tackle the winding rivers once more. After making sure that my binoculars and map are easily accessible, I bundle myself into the kayak again and push away from the island. I navigate back along the path I drew through this maze, under the curtain of vines, through the reeds, and onto the wider branches of the river. I keep an eye out for my surroundings, admiring both the flora and the fauna. The lush vegetation is no less impressive on the way back, and I'm fortunate enough to spot a few new birds for my checklist. By the time I'm out of the branching maze, the sun is slowly preparing for its final spurt to the horizon, and I'm beginning to feel the strain of my excursion in my arms. I put the paddle down across the kayak to give my arms a break and check my map. Not far left now. Just a few more bends and I'm home. I've already started recognizing a few unique trees and rocks here and there. And then, as I look up from the map, my breath catches. Right ahead of me, barely 5 meters away, is a bright blue kingfisher, sitting on a branch and staring down into the river. It turns its head, clearly focused on something I can't see, and I hold my breath in anticipation. With one powerful leap, it launches itself off the branch into the air, and it seems to hang there for a moment. It angles its body and tucks in its wings as if in slow motion. Its sparkling blue feathers seem to glow in the sun's rays. Then it plunges into the water almost faster than I can follow. A turquoise flash disappearing without a sound. Circular waves form around the point of impact, reflecting the reddening sky like fire. And just as quickly, the royal blue head emerges again. I only have a moment to register the silvery fish in its beak before it dashes off, like an azure arrow through the shady green of the leaves. The entire hunt can't have taken more than 5 seconds, but I feel like I watched it for hours. My book really hadn't been exaggerating with its enthusiasm for the kingfisher's dive. I can hardly believe how lucky I got. Had I arrived even a few seconds later, I would have missed it completely. I slowly pick up the paddle and finish my long trek with a huge grin on my face. It becomes a bit of a struggle at the end when my exhaustion suddenly catches up with me, but I manage to make it back to the docks in one piece. Alexandru and I wish each other a good night, knowing that I'll be back in the morning, and I stumble up the little winding path to my room. Back in my wooden haven, I drag myself into the shower and let warm water run over my exhausted limbs. The jet massages my back, arms, and scalp. The hot steam releases the tension of the day, and I once again realize how tiring kayak trips really are. As my eyes are about to close, I turn off the water, dry my hair, and throw myself into my bed of reeds. The soft mattress catches me, the blanket smelling like the sun. With half an ear, I listen to my own breathing become deeper and deeper. In my mind's eye, I follow the flight of the kingfisher. It leaps into the air and twists around itself. Its blue coat is like the sky, turning into a red sunset, before vanishing below the surface of the night.